The Senate will come to order. I ask everyone to please recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Rabbi Mark Getman of Temple Emmanuel of Canarsie in Brooklyn, New York, will deliver today's invocation. Rabbi.
We call on your spirit to guide all elected leaders in New York State, from the governor's office to those gathered here today in this legislative session, to all local villages, towns, and all those in elected and appointed positions throughout the state. Instill in them the integrity, empathy, and refusal to ignore injustice that defined George Washington's when he bid his officers farewell in 1783, charging them to establish rule of law upon immutable principles of private morality. Inspire them by the Roosevelt's profound call for economic reform and basic dignity when masses sought deliverance from poverty's grip. Equip leaders now to combat whatever threatens residents' well-being or denies anyone an equal chance to thrive, observe their beliefs without prejudice or discrimination. When some turn neighbor against neighbor because of religious creed or ethnic origin, ignite again Lady Liberty's light, binding all hurt, hungry, and oppressed to shelter here regardless of identity, background, or origin. Just as FDR strengthened leaders to overcome tyranny abroad, steel their resolve now to defeat intolerance's threats from within. Help them enact policies and forge partnerships across faiths and across political affiliations to protect religious freedoms for all. Where racism still casts its shadow over hopes and xenophobia and anti-Semitism rears up to spread fear, compel leaders, as Eleanor Roosevelt did, to follow the heart's truth and do what you feel to be right, for you'll be criticized anyway. Make them tireless advocates, bridging divides to affirm the equal claim to life and liberty you intend for every child you created, whatever their skin tone or background. Thus, let freedom ring from Buffalo shores to Staten Island's heights. Freedom of speech and worship. Freedom to walk safely, unafraid of violence. Freedom from want, so none are denied education, shelter, housing, or care. May you also lift up the brave men and women, veterans of New York's greatest military forces, our police forces, EMTs, firemen, and those who serve on the front lines, those who have served and continue to serve our state and nation, hazarding their lives in defense of freedom. From Revolutionary War patriots at Saratoga to Civil War regiments marching to save the Union, from the Fighting 69th, forged on Manhattan streets, to the famed Rainbow Division, troops who valiantly spilled their blood for humanity in world wars, from troops rushing without hesitation to help on 9/11 and after, to natural disasters in their own backyards, to legions deployed now around the globe, the selfless service echoes in these halls. Bless them, heal their wounds, both seen and unseen, comfort their families awaiting their safe return. May their sacrifices remind those here of the incredible blessings we enjoy and compel us to strengthen liberty's foundations with generations of soldiers, sailors, air crews who fought fierce battles to secure our freedoms. We ask that Lady Liberty's torch blaze bright, summoning outcasts and proclaiming your desire for justice to dwell in our halls of power, even as it does in heaven. As these elected representatives begin their work today and this week, may they be guided by wisdom, compassion, and a spirit of selfless public service. Help them to put aside differences and agendas to help them find common ground for the betterment of our state and all its residents. Bless their efforts as they allocate resources, they draft policies, and make decisions that impact so many. And may all that transpires here be for the greater good. May God bless the United States of America, bless the state of New York, its citizens, and everyone. Amen.
Reading of the journal.
In Senate, Sunday, February 25, 2024, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Saturday, February 24, 2024 was read and approved. On motion, the Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the journal stands approved as read. Presentations of petitions, messages from the Assembly, messages from the Governor, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, communications and reports from state officers, motions and resolutions. Senator Gineris.
Madam President, good afternoon. Amendments offered to the following third reading calendar bills by Senator Thomas, Calendar 300, Senator Fernandez, Calendar 350, Senator Brooke, Calendar 353, and Senator Sepulveda, Calendar 368.
The amendments are received and the bill will retain its place on the third reading calendar. Senator Gineris.
Please recognize Senator Lanza for a motion.
Senator Lanza for a motion.
Thank you, Senator Gineris. Madam President, on behalf of Senator Tedesco, on page 34, I offer the following amendments to Calendar 400, Senate Print 7547, and ask that said bill retain its place on third reading calendar.
The amendments are received and the bill will retain its place on the third reading calendar. Senator Gineris.
Please recognize Senator Myrie for an introduction.
Senator Myrie for an introduction.
Thank you, Madam President. In the past, I would have been an unusual suspect for this introduction. You see, I have the red scarf on, introducing some New Yorkers who care deeply about the Adirondack Park here in this state. A couple of years ago, we were able, as a legislature, to pass in the budget the Timbuktu Summer Climate and Careers Institute. And what that represented was giving kids from New York City an opportunity to come upstate and go to the Adirondack Park and see future career paths in fighting climate, and to also experience the Adirondack Park that belongs to them just like it belongs to every single New Yorker. So they are up here today, some from my district, but from all over the city of New York, having been alums of last year's program, and they're back here today advocating for more. They are fighting for environmental policies that protect our climate. They are fighting for cleaner water, for protection of our wilderness, and for green job creation. And so I'm really honored to present and introduce them in this Senate chamber because just like the Adirondack Park, this is their house as well. So if you could, Madam President, extend to them all of the courtesies of the House, and thank you all for making the trip up today.
To our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please rise and be recognized. Senator Gineris.
Next up, can you please recognize Senator Hoylman Siegel for an introduction.
Senator Hoylman Siegel for an introduction.
Thank you, Madam President and Deputy Leader Gianaris. I'm here today, Madam Speaker, to announce a very special guest on my right from my district on Manhattan's West Side, Dr. Sean M. Decatur. Dr. Decatur was selected in December 2022 to serve as the president of the American Museum of Natural History. He made history as the museum's first black leader. Since this legislature incorporated it in 1869, the Museum of Natural History has been one of our country's most celebrated institutions, a cultural icon, and a source of fond childhood and, speaking for myself, adult memories. The museum averages almost 5 million visitors annually, many of whom come from abroad, and I imagine some of our guests in the gallery today have been there as well. This year, President Decatur saw opening the new Gilder Center for Science, Education, and Innovation, an architecturally stunning new wing, Madam President, if you haven't been, whose atrium recalls a granite canyon cliff face. The wing is both spectacular and functional, housing an insectarium, a butterfly conservatory, new classrooms, a laboratory, and a theater. And most importantly, the new Gilder Center has welcomed 500,000 new constituents of mine in the form of Trinidadian leafcutter ants. Quite a sight to behold. President Decatur was born in Cleveland, has spent much of his professional life working in education. After getting his doctorate at Stanford, he served in numerous academic roles at Mount Holyoke College and Oberlin before his latest role as president of Kenyon College in Ohio. Let me just add and close on this. Last October, the Natural History Museum began to overhaul its stewardship of a very difficult and thorny issue. The museum has formerly held 12,000 human remains in its collection. It has removed all of those human remains on public display. This decision followed a recognition of these remains' deeply troubled history. Some of the bones belong to enslaved New Yorkers and indigenous peoples. Many were acquired to serve eugenicist turn-of-the-century research agendas. So I want to commend Dr. Decatur for his foresight and vision in leading the museum, as well as welcoming him to the Senate floor. And I urge you, Madam President, as we say, to extend him every privilege of the House. Thank you.
Dr. Decatur, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate, and we extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please rise and be recognized. Senator Gineris.
Can now take up previously adopted Resolution 1642 by Senator Sepulveda. Read its title and recognize Senator Sepulveda.
Secretary will read.
Resolution 1642 by Senator Sepulveda, commending Dr. Rafael A. Lantigua for his exceptional achievements and contributions to medicine and community service in New York State.
Senator Sepulveda on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President, for allowing me to present this resolution. Since I've been an elected senator, I've brought several people to this chamber, people that I'm very proud to have worked with or worked for, or the achievements that they've done for the state of New York. And today, I'm extremely honored to present to us a great American, a great figure here in New York State and New York City, Dr. Rafael A. Lantigua, a figure whose contributions to medicine and community service has profoundly impacted New York and beyond. Dr. Lantigua, celebrated by several, including the Dominican President Luis Abinader, Congressman Adriano Espaillat, and every single mayor and governor of the last 20 years have all reached out for his counsel because of his work in medicine and his dedication to excellence. His journey from La Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo to Columbia University highlights a commitment to advancing health care, particularly for minority populations. Through his research on the issue of aging and Alzheimer's amongst Latinos, Dr. Lantigua has addressed critical health disparities, enriching both the medical and public health facilities and public health matters. Beyond his commitment and his medical achievements, Dr. Lantigua, his involvement in community service underscores his deep commitment to advocacy and support. Recognized by numerous awards for his service, especially to the Latino and Dominican community in New York, his work reflects a profound dedication to the betterment of their lives. Make no doubt that Dr. Lantigua is a revered man in the medical community and the Latino community for his role in helping some of the poorest communities that exist in New York State and the United States. He's a hero to many here and in the Dominican Republic. In recognition of his outstanding contributions, we not only present resolution number 1642, but also the prestigious Presidential Volunteer Award Medal which will be issued by me on behalf of President Biden. This dual celebration and honor is for Dr. Lantigua's exceptional service and his significant role as a leader and advocate in our community. Dr. Lantigua, on behalf of the state of New York and a grateful nation, we thank you for your unwavering dedication and impactful word to the people in this state. I am extremely honored to present you with this recognition. And a quick note in Spanish, tenemos el honor de presentar al Dr. Rafael Lantigua, un héroe en la comunidad de rama de medicina y en la comunidad latina. El Dr. Lantigua, respetado por tantas figuras como el presidente Abinader, el congresista Adriano Espaillat y casi todos los alcaldes y gobernadores en los últimos 20 años han solicitado su consejo. El Dr. Lantigua es una persona honrada, respetada en nuestra comunidad por su dedicación, por proveer servicios médicos adecuados a muchas personas en nuestra comunidad. Y hoy, de parte del presidente Biden, le voy a presentar el honor, la medalla del presidente por sus servicios como voluntario para las personas en su comunidad. Para mí es un honor, un gran honor, presentarle este premio a un gran líder, a un gran hombre, a una gran figura latina, el Dr. Lantigua. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Jackson on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in order to congratulate Dr. Rafael Lantigua for his service, not only in the Washington Heights and Inwood area, but the entire city. And in fact, I've lived in Washington Heights ever since 1975 when I graduated from college, and Dr. Lantigua has been a part of bringing the community together, and especially when it comes to health and wellness. And so I've known him to be directly involved in improving the outcomes of the people in our community, but not only that, extending that to all parts of New York City. I'm here to say that I'm proud of what he's done. I'm happy that he's still involved in bringing the community together from a point of unity and health-wise. And so I thank my colleague, Luis Sepulveda, for bringing him up here so we can honor him today. Congratulations. Thank you.
Senator Claire on the resolution.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise today also to thank Dr. Lantigua for his work in the community, underserved community, long before others were paying attention, all that he has done for the Dominican community, and being a trusted voice and a leader, not just a medical professional, but a leader, a true leader in our community. I congratulate you on your award today. Thank you, Senator Sepulveda, for giving us this opportunity. And I probably vote aye.
To Dr. Lantigua, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please rise and be recognized. The resolution was adopted on January 30th. Senator Gineris.
Please take up the reading. Oh, I'm sorry, before we do that, the request of Senator Sepulveda, that resolution is open for co-sponsorship.
The resolution is open for co-sponsorship. Should you choose not to be a co-sponsor on the resolution, please notify the desk. Senator Gineris.
Now please take up the reading of the calendar.
Secretary.
Calendar number 87, Senate Print 4711 by Senator Martinez, an act to amend the Volunteer Firefighters Benefit Law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris, Kruger, Ort, Sewell, Cousins, White.
Announce the... Senator Webb to explain her vote. Announce the results.
Ayes 55.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 148, Senate Print 1979 by Senator Clear, an act in relation to requirement of the Empire State Development Corporation in consultation with the State University of New York
Read the
to study
last
to study the economic impact of optimizing kitchen incubators in New York State.
read the last section.
Section 4, this action take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Senator Clear to explain her vote.
Thank you, Madam President. The average cost of installing even the simplest commercial kitchen can be upwards of $20,000, which is prohibitive for so many entrepreneurs who have a unique product to bring to the marketplace, particularly those in low-income communities. It is proven that shared commercial kitchens are a viable solution to this challenge, but we do not have nearly enough of them, and access is not prioritized to those who need it the most. The purpose of this bill is to require a study and action plan concerning the transformative effects of locating small kitchen incubators on public and private college campuses and in public housing developments. In addition, Empire State Development is charged with further developing comprehensive businesses and advisory services to fully complement kitchen incubator services to help ensure that startups have every opportunity to succeed. I believe that we must be smart and target with our investments in economic development, and this bill represents the very best kind of concept, utilizing existing community partners and proven shared resources to further the economic growth and quality of life for all. Proudly vote aye. Thank you.
Senator Clear to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 148, voted in the negative, Senator Skoufis. Ayes 55, nays 1.
The bill is passed.
Pardon me, ayes 57, nays 1.
The bill is passed.
An act to amend the public health law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act take effect on the 180th day, it shall become a law.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 161, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Ashby, Borrello, Gallivan, Griffo, Helming, Lanza, Matera, Murray, Oberacker, Ort, Rhodes, Rollison, Steck, Tedisco, Weber, and White. Ayes 42, nays 16.
The bill is passed.
Thanks. Calendar number 163, Senate Print 506 by Senator Thomas, enactment of the Social Services Law.
Read the last section.
Section 3, this action take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 58.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 228, Senate Print 1195 by Senator Prasad, enactment of the Agricultural Markets Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 58.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 235, Senate Print 60 by Senator Harcum, an act in relation to directing the State Board of Real Property Tax Services to conduct a study on real property tax saturation.
Read the last section.
Section 4, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 58.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 282, Senate Print 2872 by Senator Comrie, enactment of the Public Authorities Law.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 282, voted in the negative are Senators Helming and Tedisco. Ayes 56, nays 2.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 376, Senate Print 6585 by Senator Stavisky, an act amending Chapter 548 of the laws of 2004.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Announce the results.
Ayes 58.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 406, Senate Print 2315 by Senator Clear, an act in relation to naming a certain state facility after Willie Mae Goodman.
Read the last section.
Section 4, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Giannaris Kruger, Ortso, Cousins, White.
Senator Brisport to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Senator Clear, for introducing this bill. I'm grateful we have the opportunity to honor Miss Willie Mae Goodman, who successfully fought to protect not only her daughter, Margaret, but countless other children from Willowbrook. There are a few stains on the history of our state more terrible or more telling than the infamous Willowbrook School. At Willowbrook, disabled children were subjected to wretched, often fatal conditions. They were treated as subhuman and intentionally exposed to disease for medical experimentation. Parents who did not know the extent of the horrors at Willowbrook trusted in our state and unknowingly sent their children into this nightmare. Many were deceived into providing medical consent for the experiments performed there. It's tempting to imagine that once the public began learning about the conditions at Willowbrook, it was promptly brought to an end, but that is not what happened. By 1970, Ms. Goodman and other advocates were loudly fighting against the state's plan to return their loved ones to Willowbrook. By 1972, the conditions at Willowbrook had been thoroughly documented and exposed to the nation by advocates and journalists. Yet it took another 15 years until 1987 for Willowbrook to finally be shut down. It's also worth remembering that the end of Willowbrook did not end the horrors faced by disabled New Yorkers. The same pervasive erasure, othering, and deprioritization of disabled people that gave rise to Willowbrook also allowed for dehumanizing conditions in other facilities. To this day, New York funds a private institution that actively practices aversive conditioning on disabled people deemed torture by the UN. At this very moment, they have disabled people forcibly attached to an electroshock device 9 times more powerful than a cattle prod, and our state is still subsidizing this institution. History will likely not remember the righteous or compassionate things we say about disability, but history will remember the horrors that happen on our watch and what we do or fail to do about them. Today, we remember Ms. Willie Mae Goodman, who chose to act. Thank you.
Senator Brisport to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 58.
The bill is passed.
Calendar number 407, Senate Print 8183 by Senator Mannion, an act to amend Part Q of Chapter 59 of the laws 2016.
Read the last section.
Section 2, this act shall take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Adabo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Sewell Cousins, White.
Senator Martins to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to support the bill. I compliment Senator Mannion on its introduction, but I also rise with some concerns about notification. I would prefer, and I think we all would prefer, to see notification to each member if there's a facility that's going to close in your community, in your district. And although I appreciate the fact that there's going to be notification to the President pro temp, that there's notification to employment through unions and labor unions, I would like to know myself that if there's a facility that's going to close in my district, that we be made aware at the same time and simultaneously. So I just leave it as a suggestion, Madam President, and I vote aye.
Senator Martins to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
Ayes 58.
The bill is passed. Senator Gianaris, that completes the reading of today's calendar.
Thank you, Madam President. Please recognize Senator Comrie for an introduction.
Senator Comrie for an introduction.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. Excuse me. I'm pleased to just announce and recognize that we have Scout Troop from my district, Scout Troops 144B, 1444G, and Girl Scout Troop 4704 from St. Albans. The Presbyterian Church of St. Albans has been working with Scouting for many years. They've had so many people that have become Eagle Scouts from their troop. They've been continuing to work with young people in our community, in the greater St. Albans community. They're here today to tour the Capitol to learn about civics and advocate also for the Adirondack Park, which many of them have had the opportunity to visit. We have Julie London, the chaperone and troop, the chaperone for Troop 144, Gianfranco, Troop 144, chaperone and assistant, Scoutmaster Diane Reed, Troop 144, committee chairperson, Deidre Bird, chaperone in Troop 144 and 144 Parent Troop Committee, Patrick Tomlinson, who's not here, I thought, Bridget Buckery from Troop 144, Tika Hutchinson, Troop 4704, Vanessa Williams, a Girl Scout leader and chaperone, and Leroy Hendricks Jr. and Kimberly Hendricks, chaperone and parents. And we also have Scouts. I won't say all their names because we're already past time, but I just wanted to recognize you. Thank you for coming to the Capitol. Thank you for consistently bringing Scouts to the Capitol so that they can learn about government. Hopefully you will enjoy your entire visit here and come back often to advocate for the things that you're concerned about. So, Madam President, Mr. Leader, thank you for allowing me to say a few words to introduce. If you don't mind, to give them a standing ovation, so for their opportunities to come here today. Thank you.
To our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Senate. We extend to you the privileges and courtesies of this House. Please rise and be recognized. Senator Gineris.
Madam President, there will be an immediate meeting of the Rules Committee in room 332.
There will be an immediate meeting of the Rules Committee in room 332.
Senate will stand at ease.
The Senate will stand at ease. The Senate will return to order. Senator Gineris.
Madam President, there's a report of the Rules Committee at the desk. Can we take that up, please?
The Secretary will read.
Senator Stewart Cousins from the Committee on Rules reports the following bills. Senate Print 8638 by Senator Myrie, enact to amend the Civil Practice Law and Rules. Senate Print 8639, Senate Redistricting Bill, enact to amend the state law. Bills report read to third reading.
Move to accept the report of the Rules Committee.
All those in favor of accepting the Rules Committee report signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The report of the Rules Committee is accepted. Senator Gineris.
Can we now take up the reading of the supplemental calendar?
Secretary will read.
Calendar number 465, Senate Print 8638 by Senator Myrie, enact to amend the Civil Practice Law and Rules.
Laid aside.
Calendar number 466, Senate Print 8639, Senate Redistricting Bill, enact to amend the state law.
Laid aside. Senator Gineris.
Can we now take up the reading of the controversial calendar, beginning with calendar 466?
The Secretary will ring the bell. The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 466, Senate Print 8639, Senate Redistricting Bill, enact to amend the state law.
Read the last section.
Section 5, this action will take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris Kruger, Ort, Stewart Cousins, White.
Senator Gineris to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. As everyone in here knows, we are considering the map that was sent to us, the congressional map sent to us by the Independent Redistricting Commission. I do want to state at the outset that I do appreciate the service of the various commissioners who did their best to come up with a map that they thought was best. Unfortunately, I will be voting in the negative. I think there are numerous problems with the map that was sent to us that run afoul of the constitutional guidelines that exist in our state constitution. Most notably, there are a half a dozen county cuts, places where counties were divided newly in this new map from the existing districts. Those 6 counties were cut 8 different ways in order to draw this map. One of the issues the Constitution highlights is that the map should not be drawn specifically to protect incumbents, and I think in the map before us there are, again, numerous instances on a bipartisan basis where it was clear that the intention of the map is simply to protect incumbents of both parties. And there were a number of instances where communities of interest were not properly protected in the drawing of the map that's before us. So I will be voting in the negative and look forward to working with my colleagues in the Assembly to come up with a better product that will better serve the people of this state. Thank you, Madam President.
Senator Gineris to be recorded in the negative. Senator Borrello to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I hear a lot in this House about protecting democracy and the will of the people, and the reality is the people did speak. They spoke in a constitutional amendment that they wanted to eliminate this behind closed doors way of drawing redistricting maps. And it was created the IRC with that. And that was the people speaking, saying, let's change this process. Let's make it a more honest and open process. But despite that, once my colleagues on the other side of the aisle took over, they decided to undermine that IRC. They started by trying to defund the IRC at the beginning. They sought to change the Constitution again, to change the parameters, how the IRC members were actually assigned, and going toward a more political, behind closed doors process, changing the two-thirds vote to a simple majority. The list goes on and on, all along trying to undermine the will of the people that said we are going to eliminate this behind closed doors partisan gerrymandering. Despite all of that, we did end up having a map that was obviously split last time, and once again, we sent a bill to the governor the Democrats asked if we could just draw the lines ourselves, because we don't trust the people on the IRC. We don't trust the people of New York State, the people that said, this is the process that we want. We don't trust them. You know better than they do. That's the problem. So you can sit here and point out what you don't like about these maps, but this is the process that the people of New York State chose. This is the open, transparent process that they asked for. But we're going to continue to undermine the IRC. So with that being said, what were the results? There were 10 members of this commission, 10 commissioners. 9-1, they voted to support this map, 9-1. Find 10 people that want to go out to dinner and try to find 10 people that all want to go to the same place, eat the same food. Find 9 of those 10. That's a difficult thing to do. But a process like this, a difficult process, 9-1 voted to support these maps. Because the reality is, we don't really care what the people think. We care what the political outcome is at the end. And that's what this is about. It's taking it away from the people, taking away the choices that they made. The constitutional amendment, which, by the way, is not an easy thing to do, to change the Constitution, but the people of New York did so and created this process. And we are, once again, going to undermine this process. Say, we don't trust you, the people that brought us here, the people that vote for us. We don't trust you to do the right thing. We're going to tell you what your will is. That's wrong. That's why I am supporting these maps. Thank you.
Senator Borrello to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Martins to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I rise to support these maps. Madam President, you may remember, members of my colleagues here in the Senate may remember, but I served on the Independent Redistricting Commission before resigning to run for the Senate. And so I had the opportunity to participate in this process. And I call on each and every one of us to remember what this process is about. In case anyone has forgotten, Madam President, the members of the Independent Redistricting Commission were appointed by the legislative leaders, not only here in the Senate, but down the hall in the Assembly. The chair of the Independent Redistricting Commission, Ken Jenkins, was appointed by the majority leader of this House. The vice chair was appointed by the minority leader of the Assembly, Charlie Nesbitt. Each side has staff. Each side has consultants, demographers, attorneys versed in federal and state election law. They have access to consultants that helped in drawing these maps. And the idea that you have members of a commission, 10 members that were able to achieve a 9-1 consensus to move these maps, Madam President, is something that this body should be celebrating. And I rise to thank not only Chair Jenkins, but Vice Chair Nesbitt for the incredible job that they did in building that consensus around these maps. That's what this is about. I urge my colleagues to support these maps and the process that led to these maps being approved. Because these lines aren't drawn haphazardly. You don't have 10 people just sitting around a table with magic markers and pens trying to draw these maps. These maps are drawn meticulously. They're drawn in conformance with law. They're drawn, I think, with all of the best intentions. And the idea that we had 9 members of a 10-member commission, consultants on both sides of the aisle or all sides of the aisle, the representative from the Working Families Party and the representative from the Conservative Party all voting in favor of these maps, should tell us something. They were able to reach consensus on these maps, and again, that's something we should celebrate. The Constitution worked. The process worked. Now, I know there are members in this chamber who are going to be running for office, who have already declared for Congress. This should be good news for all of us. You've got great maps to run on. Congratulations. But, Madam President, we should all, as a body, understand, and I hope we all do understand, that this is about fairness, process, and our responsibility to the residents and citizens of this great state to make sure that we move forward with the process that has actually worked, against perhaps all odds, since it is a 10-member board. Let's celebrate the fact that we got a 9-1 result. Let's celebrate the fact that the demographers and the consultants on both sides of that divide came together and they all agreed on these maps. Madam President, far from voting no, I'm going to vote yes. I'm going to urge everyone to. I'm going to remind everyone that we have a Constitution that we've all sworn to uphold. This is part of that Constitution, and I'd rather have these maps prepared by non-politicians, Madam President, and have them supplied to us in a nonpartisan way, which has been done. The IRC did their job. They provided maps where there was consensus, and I urge all of us here in this chamber to do our jobs as well. Let's support these maps. Madam President, I vote aye.
Senator Martins to be recorded in the affirmative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 466, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Addabbo, Bailey, Breslin, Brisport, Brooke, Chu, Claire, Comrie, Cooney, Fernandez, Gianaris, Gonzalez, Harcum, Hinchy, Hoyman Siegel, Jackson, Kavanaugh, Kennedy, Kruger, Liu, Mannion, Martinez, May, Mayer, Myrie, Parker, Basad, Ramos, Rivera, Ryan, Salazar, Sanders, Garcella, Spann, Sepulveda, Serrano, Skoufis, Stavisky, Stewart Cousins, Thomas, and Webb. Ayes 17, nays 40.
The bill is defeated. Senator Gianaris.
Okay, let's move on to calendar 465, please.
The Secretary will read.
Calendar number 465, Senate Print 8638 by Senator Myrie, enactment of civil practice law and rules.
Senator Lanza, why do you rise?
Madam President, would the sponsor yield to some questions? In fact, Madam President, would the sponsor offer an explanation of the bill?
Does the sponsor yield, and will the sponsor offer an explanation?
Through you, Madam President, yes and yes. So why don't we start with the New York Constitution itself, in Article 3, Section 5. Starts, an apportionment by the legislature or other body shall be subject to review by the Supreme Court at the suit of any citizen under such reasonable regulations as the legislature may prescribe. That is what we're doing here today. We are prescribing a regulation for these types of lawsuits exactly as prescribed by the New York State Constitution. But we are also comporting with precedent in the law already. In the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, we limit where certain suits can be brought in a similar fashion. And that is similar to the Federal Voting Rights Act, where if you wanted to challenge your designation as a pre-clearance jurisdiction, you couldn't go to any court. You had to go to one court, D.C. Circuit. And that was to develop expertise in that court and for there to be unity in how these topics were addressed. Additionally, last year, we passed and was signed by the governor a law that would limit challenges to constitutionality of election laws in a similar fashion in certain jurisdictions. So this is an attempt for us to fulfill our constitutional duty and to bring some clarity to the process when bringing lawsuits.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, So is it your contention that Article 3, Section 5, when it speaks to reasonable manner, includes limiting to only 4 courts in the entire state of New York for challenges to political electoral maps?
You, Madam President, it is my contention that this is a wholly constitutional exercise of our power.
Sponsor yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. So the sponsor, so you're not trying to amend the Constitution. You believe this is consistent with the Constitution?
President, that's right.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. Would the sponsor agree that legal challenges to political district maps invoke constitutional matters?
Through you, Madam President, that may or may not be the case, depending, I think it's very fact-dependent on whether they implicate constitutional matters. But as I have mentioned, I believe that this bill, as our current statutes on the books limiting jurisdictions for certain types of challenges, are constitutional and consistent with the principle of having courts develop expertise and allowing as much access to the courts as possible, given the time-sensitive nature of these particular challenges.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. So let me put it another way. Would you agree that legal challenges to political district maps invoke civil rights?
Through you, Madam President, they may.
The sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. Certainly, the sponsor would agree that legal challenges to political district maps invoke voting rights.
Through you, Madam President, they may.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. Could the sponsor tell us what we all mean when we speak of communities of interest in the context of district maps?
Through you, Madam President, thank you for your patience, Senator Lanza. I think it is a mix, in part of court determining what communities of interest are, but also the data that is collected on demographics and economics. This is something that is not unfamiliar in the political and electoral space. But I think I see where you're going, Senator Lanza, in having to determine what is a community of interest that's certainly within the province of a particular court. And what we are prescribing here is not shutting out people's ability to have that community of interest be heard or be litigated, but rather to bring some uniformity to the process so that the decisions can be made as correctly and expeditiously as possible.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield? The sponsor yields.
Would the sponsor agree that a court in Franklin County might have a better idea about communities of interest within that county than, let's say, New York County courts?
Through you, Madam President, that may be the case. But as I mentioned at the outset of this, and it's the reason why I wanted to ground this debate in that, the Voting Rights Act, passed in the late 60s and early 70s, specifically by regulation and by statute, required that certain types of challenges go specifically to one court, no matter where in the country that challenge was coming from. And what undergirds that principle is that certain courts have the ability to hear matters even if it's outside of their geographical, typical geographical jurisdiction. And in this case, as you mentioned in your line of questioning, where the implications can be on voting rights and civil rights, et cetera, I think it is important for New Yorkers to have the comfort and the predictability to know that should they want to challenge redistricting statewide apportionment, that they have specific places to go and that those specific places develop the expertise to deal with these matters in a timely fashion.
To yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, could the sponsor remind us how many counties there are in the state of New York?
Through you, Madam President, 62, if I'm not mistaken.
Will the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, it's my understanding that if this becomes law, a person in the state of New York who wishes to challenge district maps would be relegated to bringing that action in only 4 of the 62 counties in New York. Is that true?
Madam President, that would be true, depending on where they live. All 4 wouldn't be available to them. It would depend on which judicial district they live in, or department, rather.
I apologize. Would the sponsor yield?
The sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, it's my understanding that the first draft of this legislation allowed for only 1 county, Albany County. Is that correct?
Madam President, that's correct.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, why does this second iteration expand from that 1 county to now 4 counties?
Through you, Madam President, it comports with what's already in the law, in the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, as well as legislation that was passed last year. And so we, in an effort to be uniform in our approach to these types of issues, we decided to expand it.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, where in the John R. Lewis Act does it say that such actions can only be brought in Albany, Westchester, New York, and Erie County?
Through you, Madam President, I don't have the sections in front of me. But it's specifically relating to preclearance, as was the Federal Voting Rights Act in funneling challenges to preclearance jurisdiction designation to 1 court. In the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act here in New York, if you want to challenge your preclearance designation, you have to bring it in these courts in a similar fashion.
Would the
It's
sponsor
Article
yield?
17 of the election law.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
And through you, Madam President, you may have answered this question just a moment ago. Why these 4 counties?
Through you, Madam President, at the risk of repeating myself, it comports with what's already on the books in several other election law cases.
Does the sponsor yield? Sponsor yields.
Yes.
Through you, Madam President, if that's the case, why did the first version only include Albany?
Madam President, it is an iterative process. Just like every other piece of legislation that goes through changes, that was the same process here.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, I thought it had nothing to do with a process, but that it was mandated by the John R. Lewis.
Madam President, respectfully, that is not what I said. I have been saying repeatedly that this matches the framework that we have laid out both in the John R. Lewis Act, in the bill that was passed and signed last year, and relative to the Federal Voting Rights Act. I did not say that they matched exactly, but the intent and the principle guiding it were similar to all of those cases.
Sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. So just to be clear, the John R. Lewis Act does not specifically select Albany, Westchester, New York, and Erie County, or does it?
Through you, Madam President, it does in the preclearance context, just to be clear. Those same exact counties, but only insofar as you are challenging your designation as a preclearance jurisdiction.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. So this legislation would expand aspects of the John R. Lewis Act to a wholly new area.
Through you, Madam President, it would not, most obviously because it is a separate bill, but more specifically because the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, the teeth of that, the focus of that is pre-clearance and local electoral actions, but it very obviously does not include statewide apportionment or redistricting, whereas this implicates statewide apportionment as the bill that was passed last year that implicated statewide constitutionality of specific election laws.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, if you know, Senator Myrie, could you remind this body how many judicial departments there are in the state of New York?
Through you, Madam President, I hope I don't embarrass my law school professors here. 4 departments.
Would the sponsor yield?
Sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, I'm thinking about the 13 judicial districts that New York State is divided into. And my question concerns that. Why not, and I'll get to the rationale for doing this, but through you, Madam President, why not, if we're going to limit it to a certain number of courts, why not use what is already before us in New York State, which is that we have 13 judicial districts? Why not, if we're going to limit it to 13 and not 4?
Through you, Madam President, so I think for a couple of reasons. One, it is almost certain that these will be challenged, they will be appealed, the lawsuits, that is, they will be appealed. So they're going to end up in the appellate courts anyways. So I think for purposes of efficiency, it makes sense to go directly to that appellate court. I would also point again to the federal analog here, that it would have been incredibly easy for the federal apparatus to say, bring the challenges wherever you live and wherever the federal courts are in your jurisdiction, but they did not. And they did that for a specific reason. I think it is the same principle that we are trying to abide by here, and that is to make this as simple and clean for New Yorkers trying to vindicate their rights in this space as possible, and to also develop some expertise on the appellate level on these particular issues.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Senator Myrie, staying with the judicial districts we have in the state of New York, it's something I'm very familiar with. I'm very proud of one of the accomplishments I've been able to achieve here in this body is the creation of the 13th Judicial District, which embodies Staten Island. It's really changed things for the better. Would you agree that the rationale or the justification for having 13 judicial districts throughout New York State is that it is important for people who seek justice in our courts that they appear before justices that they elected?
Forgive me, Madam President, repeat the question.
So would the sponsor, through you, Madam President, agree that the justification for having 13 judicial districts in the state of New York is that it is important for people who find themselves in a courtroom, who seek justice, that they are before justices that are from within their community, that were elected by that community in our democratic process?
Through you, Madam President, I don't disagree. I think that is important. I think there's a notable difference here, though. When we talk about redistricting and certainly statewide apportionment, what happens in one corner of the state affects every other corner. This is a special type of litigation that in other contexts requires, setting aside the entire court calendar. It requires pushing it up to the top of the court's business. And why is that? It's because we pay special attention when it implicates statewide electoral rights and people's ability to exercise the franchise. And that's what we're attempting to do here, again, as we have done in the past, is to, when it implicates statewide apportionment and where one change here affects a change over there, I think it's appropriate that the appellate courts be the courts of jurisdiction to deal with these issues.
Yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. So, as my colleague knows, as an attorney, there are very few simple matters that come before our courts in the state of New York. In fact, I would argue, there are many which are far more complex and complicated than the issue before us. So and those are handled on a daily basis quite efficiently and effectively throughout New York State. Through you, Madam President, is it the sponsor's contention that justices in Onondaga, Delaware, Steuben, Allegheny, Clinton, Franklin, Essex, that justices there, duly elected by the people in those communities, lack the ability to have an expertise on matters such as these when they come before their court?
Through you, Madam President, that is not at all my implication. I'm sure all of them are very fine jurists and have worked very hard to get there and are representative of what the people elected them to do. I would return back to the precedent that is already in our laws. This is not something that is meant to offend judges that are not in that particular jurisdiction, but it is, as I have mentioned, to build some unity and consistency in the process such that no plaintiff, regardless of party or particular interest, can game the system in order to get a more favorable outcome. Here, everyone gets to play by the same rules, and I think it introduces some consistency into the process should you want to vindicate your rights in litigation.
Will the sponsor yield?
The sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. I'm glad my colleague mentioned regardless of party. Is it just a coincidence that each of these counties are places where the judges are elected overwhelmingly as Democrats?
You, Madam President, just as my colleague mentioned, all of the judges in all of the jurisdictions you mentioned, I wouldn't cast any aspersion on any of the judges elected in any of these counties who have gone through the same process as the justices that you just mentioned.
Sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Sponsor yields.
I'm not suggesting you're casting aspersions, but through you, Madam President, I would ask then, why not a single county that is Republican in terms of the election of justices? Why not a single one of those is included in the list of places where a party who feels aggrieved, who believes their constitutional rights are being violated, can go?
Through you, Madam President, the counties selected here, again, match what has been selected in the past, so this isn't in response to any particular action, but these are also population centers within those departments, and I would note that the department itself, the panels, the appellate panels that make up the individuals that you would have to go before, come from all over and aren't necessarily from that particular county.
Sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, if it's so important to limit in the state of New York to only 4 counties these type of constitutional challenges, based on the notion that we need courts that could develop expertise to handle such challenges, why not do the same when it comes to, and I'm not suggesting we do this, in fact, I would oppose it, do the same when it comes to First Amendment rights? Those are very important.
President, I'm just going to ask my friend to further clarify what you mean there.
Through you, Madam President. So if the rationale for doing this is that these constitutional challenges that would invariably be brought are so important that the 13 judicial districts are not up to the job, the 62 counties are not up to the job, only Albany County, Westchester County, New York County, and Erie County judges are up to the job, because we need justices that can have a special expertise. If that's the case when it comes to matters as important as the First Amendment, and I won't go through the entire Bill of Rights, why not apply the same there?
You, Madam President, I think my colleague's quarrel is not with this bill, but with our judicial system writ large. We have specialty courts in this system. In fact, in New York County, there is a whole commercial part, as you know, Senator Lanza, because that happens to be the financial capital of the world, and it makes sense to develop that type of expertise and have that be done in that particular court. I would never pit any of our rights against each other, First, Second, Third, Fourth, Fifth Amendment, but our precedents has allotted different sensitivities to both, sometimes because one right implicates not just the individual, but the collective. And here, we are talking about our democracy. We are talking about a fundamental right, one that impacts not just the individual, but inherently impacts communities writ large. And that's why it's important to introduce, I think, some unity and predictability into that system, and why that is treated differently than perhaps some other potential infringements on individual rights.
The sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, I would argue that freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, and we know the rest, are as fundamental as any right being discussed here. And so I won't belabor the point, but it just doesn't make sense to me, Madam President, that somehow when it comes to this, we mysteriously need a specialization that only can exist in 4 counties that happen to be overwhelmingly Democrat counties. And so I would ask this, through you, Madam President.
Sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
So, through you, Madam President, I would imagine that what is being argued here is that these 4 counties need to be the only places where you could bring this action because they either have or will develop an expertise in these matters, which, by the way, through you, Madam President, these matters come up every 10 years or so, sometimes more than once every 10 years. So when these matters come before Albany County, Westchester County, New York County, Erie County, they're no different. They're in no better position or worse than any other county in the state of New York. By the time they develop this expertise, it will not be needed for another 10 years. And so if Albany County can get up to speed this year, this month, maybe this week, if they can get up to speed, so can every other county in the state of New York. So again, through you, Madam President, can the sponsor tell us why only 4 counties in New York are up to the job?
Through you, Madam President, I think what my colleague is suggesting is that the intent of this bill is to cabin all conversation and litigation for some nefarious purpose. But what I've tried to reiterate is that this is not an uncommon approach. This is something that has already been done by this body and that has been done by our partners on the federal level as well, and that in other areas of the law is also present. And so I don't want there to be any confusion about our intent on this bill. One, it is to, as the Constitution, the state Constitution outlines, to promulgate and prescribe a reasonable regulation for lawsuits. That is clear in the Constitution. That is what we're trying to exercise today. And in our judgment, in the legislature's judgment, we believe that this particular framework, as used in the past and used in other areas, will provide the best opportunity for these lawsuits to proceed in a way that makes sense for most New Yorkers.
Will the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. Just very quickly, I've listened for a number of years now about the many things that were done in this body and by this legislature that were so wrong that they needed to be changed. So I don't think that things that were done in the past are necessarily prologue or a guide to what needs to be done here. And the point remains that this has never been done. This is a bill of first impression, if you will. And so through you, Madam President, I just return to the question. Is it the sponsor's contention that judges in Franklin County are unable to develop the same expertise than judges that sit in Albany County?
Through you, Madam President, I'm from Kings County. I happen to think it is one of the better counties in the state, but it is not one of the counties selected in this bill. I do not feel affronted, offended. I don't think that the judges in Kings County are not capable or smart enough to handle this. This is what we have arrived at as, I believe, the best solution to what is potentially a forum shopping problem. So I hear my colleague in saying that there are many other capable jurists across the state to handle this. I don't disagree with that. But we have made a policy choice that is consistent with the laws already on the books, not just things that we, not just that passed as prologue, but that has the law. It's on the books right now and is a principle that has been upheld on the federal level as well.
Would the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Through you, Madam President. I agree with the forum shopping, but it strikes me that this legislation is nothing more than statutory, mandatory forum shopping. And in fact, the shopping is done. You've made your purchase. You've selected 4 counties. The rest be damned. And that is my objection to this legislation. Through you, Madam President, you live in Brooklyn. I live in Staten Island, a couple of miles from New York County. Might be fine for you and fine for me. But if you live in Franklin County and your constitutional rights have been violated and you seek redress in our courts, you have to go more than 150 miles to find that justice. So why does the sponsor believe that that is okay?
Through you, Madam President, I believe it's okay for all of the reasons that I have outlined in support of this bill, but I would note that that works the other way as well. And we have seen it happen, where other courts that are across the state are very far from voters who are also trying to vindicate their rights and who also have had to travel 100 or so miles. We're hoping that once this is passed and hopefully signed into law, that voters now will know that there are only 4 places that you would have to go to should you want to do this, and it wouldn't be something sprung on you as a voter, as some, a non-specified court in the state, but that you would have predictability in knowing exactly where you would go and hopefully have enough time to plan to vindicate your rights.
Would the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President, if this becomes law, they're going to know it. Doesn't mean they're going to like it. And it doesn't mean it's right. I just keep coming back to that person who lives in the middle of the state. Cortland County. Constitutional rights are violated. And they've got to figure out a way to get 150 miles to a court when there's probably a pretty good courthouse with pretty good judges that they elected that come from their community a couple of minutes away. And so through you, Madam President, I would ask the sponsor, don't you believe that that is a violation of due process rights that we have in this country?
Madam President, in that hypothetical, I don't think that there is a violation of due process, and I don't think that this bill in its entirety is violative of our due process laws, because you still do have the opportunity to vindicate your rights. We are just, as we have done in other areas of the law, and which has been done in the past, are focusing where that vindication can take place. But this is not an infringement or an eradication of your ability to vindicate those rights.
Sponsor yield.
Yes.
Through you, Madam President. And I know the answer to this question. I know how my colleague will answer it. And so it's more rhetorical than not. But would it be okay for a person who lives in New York City, whose voting rights are violated, they're a citizen, they're registered, they live within the district, they show up to the polling place, and for whatever reason, they're told to go home. You can't vote. I don't like the way you look. If that happens, does the sponsor believe that it would be okay, consistent with due process rights, that that person would have to go, which one haven't I spoke about? Seneca County. Would it be all right to the sponsor? Would it be consistent with due process? Would it be consistent with our Constitution that such a person would need to find a way to get to Seneca County in order to find justice?
Through you, Madam President, it would not be okay, and that's not the current process. If someone has had that exact hypothetical happen, they would not have to go to a court somewhere far, but we have processes already in place for them to have those rights hopefully vindicated locally. That is an individual infringement as opposed to what the Constitution references in Article 3, Section 5 about apportionment and statewide apportionment and the impact that that has not just to the individual voter but to voters writ large.
Senator Lanza, before you continue, I'd just like to remind you of the time that you've passed the 30-minute mark.
We can let him finish his line of questions.
Yes. No, I was just reminding him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
You're welcome.
Just a couple more.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Through you, Madam President. So as I suspected, because I know my colleague, he agrees that that would not be all right. But it is not different. It's not different. In fact, it's the same thing. We're talking about virtually the same rights. The right to vote. We'd all agree that unlawful gerrymandering violates a person's rights when it comes to the electoral process. And so I will just make the point through you, Madam President, if that is not all right, then clearly this isn't either. And through you, Madam President, and I know I've been beating around this one for a while, is it the sponsor's contention that judges in the other counties could not do the job? And if not, then why shouldn't they be allowed to do the job they were elected to do?
Not my contention, and it is my hope that every jurist that puts on the robes and serves the public in that way will have the opportunity to continue to do so after this bill is signed into law.
Would the sponsor yield?
Yes.
Through you, Madam President. But we can't get around the clear rationale. I mean, it's in the sponsor's justification memo. Clearly, what is being alleged here on the floor of the New York State Senate is that judges in the other counties can't do the job, that this requires a special expertise that can only happen in 4 counties in New York that happen to be democratically elected counties, that only they can develop an expertise that will only be needed today and not again for 10 years. And if that's the case, and I've tried to go through hypotheticals and examples to demonstrate why that is so wrong, why that is so unconstitutional, why that is so violative of due process rights that we take, I think, too much for granted in this state. Through you, Madam President, would it be all right, so we talk about expertise. I look at certain counties, and it seems to me, like New York County, it seems to me that they haven't quite developed an expertise when it comes to keeping the streets safe. It's my perspective. When I look out the window from Staten Island, I don't see Russia, but I see New York County. And it seems to me that there is a lacking of expertise. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's something else. Yeah, he is far too young for that. Yeah. Right. So why not, if that's what we need, why not say anyone arrested for committing a crime, accused of committing a crime, why not say, let's have them all prosecuted in Staten Island? I think we do a fine job on Staten Island. I think we have a great expertise there. I think we're very efficient. Why not do it that way?
Through you, Madam President, I appreciate my colleagues' hypotheticals, hypotheticals that are not related to voting rights or apportionment. I would argue that this is different in kind, particularly because we have seen this before in our laws, in what the Department of Justice has done on the Federal Voting Rights Act, on requiring that the D.C. Circuit be the place where those challenges take place. I think it's in line with all of the things that we have mentioned, both our statutes, our precedent, and what we have seen on the federal level.
Through you, Madam President, thank you. On the bill, quickly.
Senator Lanza on the bill.
Through you, Madam President, first I want to thank my esteemed colleague for the discussion. We obviously come from a different perspective here and have opposing viewpoints with respect to this legislation, but I always enjoy speaking to and discussing these matters, especially when it comes to constitutional matters, with my good friend Senator Myrie. Madam President, I oppose this legislation because, contrary to what my good friend just said, this is not different than all the other constitutional rights that we are afforded here in America, in New York. It's not different. I agree with him when he said these maps and the issues surrounding them strike at the heart of our republic and our democracy and what is just and what is not. And so, too, all the other protections in our Constitution. No less, no more. First Amendment and beyond. And it just seems suspicious to those of us in the political world that when it comes to this issue, this constitutional right, that has repercussions with respect not only to constitutional rights and the people in New York, their rights, their voting rights, but also involves the rights of the elected, and who's in power and who is not. That all of a sudden, when it overflows into that arena, when it comes down to who's going to win an election and who's going to lose an election. Now we need special courts. We don't like what happened the last time around, even though this is one of the courts. Different composition. I won't get into that. But it's not different, Madam President. Constitutional rights are constitutional rights are constitutional rights. And we have 13 judicial districts in New York for a reason. It is another fundamental right that we believe in America that when we bring a grievance before a court, that it's going to be a court familiar with us, with our community. That it's going to be a court that was put in place by that very same community. And this just throws that out the window. I believe this is unconstitutional. It would be found so. I really believe that. And I really wish my colleagues would rethink the idea that only justices in these 4 counties somehow know the law better than any other justices in every other county. It's absurd. It really is. Madam President, I'll be voting no when the time comes.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Borrello.
Madam President, on the bill.
Senator Borrello on the bill.
You know, I think Senator Lanza summed it up nicely about the constitutional issue here. The First Amendment really is what's at issue here. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution, which supersedes the state constitution. The First Amendment says, among other things, that you have the right to petition your government. There's no limitation on that. There's no convenient place to go, so expertise, no expertise. You have the right to petition your government. It's in dictatorships where you're limited as to where you can go. That is not this area. You know, what's funny about this is that what we do here most often in this chamber is provide more opportunities for people to petition their government. How many bills have we voted on that include a private right of action? A lot of them. We're making it easier for people to petition the court, easier to bring lawsuits. But not today. Today, we're going to go from 62 counties to 4, all of which just happen to be blue counties. That's egregious. It's bold. It's also shameful. Why are we doing this? Well, because maybe you got spanked a little bit in 2022, and you don't like that. So we're going to change the rules of the game. I get it. You have that right to do so, but not in violation of the United States Constitution, not in violation of the First Amendment, not so egregious that the people of New York State will be limited as to where they can receive justice. I hear a lot about justice from my friends on the other side of the aisle. I want to make sure that people get justice. Every person gets justice. But not today. Today, only 4 places you can get justice in New York State. That's wrong, and I'm voting no. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Steck.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the sponsor please rise?
Will the sponsor yield? The sponsor yields.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, for the sponsor, did I hear you correctly that previously in debate you said that you were from Kings County, and as a sponsor of this bill, you were not offended that Kings County was not one of the venues, the 4 venues that we've been talking about?
Through you, Madam President, I believe that's what I said.
I just want to make sure I heard Kings. Thank you, Madam President. The sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
All right,
Sponsor
so
yields.
my Senate district is in the North Country, as you know: Clinton, Franklin, St. Lawrence, Essex, Warren, Washington County. I can guarantee you the people of those 6 counties will be offended, especially when you have to drive 4.5 hours for some of them to get to Albany. An electric vehicle in the winter, that could be a daunting task, but that's a little tangential. My question is, what happens if one of my constituents goes and files a case, attempts to file a case in their home Supreme Court concerning maps. Does the court just throw it out? Or what is the process when they walk into Franklin County or to Clinton County and say, I want to challenge these maps that affect my lines?
Through you, Madam President, what I believe would happen there is that the defendant in that case, whomever that might be, would move to dismiss it because it's in the improper venue.
If the sponsor would continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Thank you. Through you, Madam President. Several times in previous debate, you cited and you used the word precedents, and you pointed out precedents of the district, the D.C. Circuit Court. You pointed out the precedents of the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of last year. Now, the D.C. Circuit Court is the interesting thing about that is it is not part of any state. The District of Columbia is independent of the 50 states. It has a special status as a neutral ground. It was done so intentionally, and that is why it has jurisdiction over some of these voting rights challenges. So my question is, does New York State have a similar kind of no man's land that's been carved out that would be akin to a D.C. Circuit Court?
Through you, Madam President, we do not have the D.C. Circuit in New York State.
Okay, Madam President, the sponsor will continue.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Thank you. So would you agree that the D.C. Circuit Court is a special creature because it doesn't fall under or doesn't have a dog in the fight that any of the 50 states that it serves in these kinds of questions? Does that make sense to you?
Through you, Madam President, I would respectfully disagree.
Madam President, the sponsor will continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
You mentioned, again, as precedent, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act that we voted on in this chamber last year, 2023, correct?
22.
We voted on
Sorry, through
that?
you, Madam President, 2022.
All right, and Madam President, the sponsor yield?
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Were you the sponsor of that legislation?
Through you, Madam President, I was.
All right, Madam President, the sponsor would continue to yield?
Yes.
Now, this Voting Rights Act that we took up in 2022, the redistricting and those court cases were, I mean, the maps and the special master and the appellate process, the Steuben County case, that had already occurred before we voted on the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act, correct? I mean, April?
Madam President, I think you're right. I was just trying to recall the timeline there. But I would note again that the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act did not and does not deal with statewide redistricting or apportionment, whereas this bill does.
But election laws, Madam President, through you. But it deals with election law.
Through you, Madam President, yes, it does.
Madam President, if the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
If I could be more clear, because this is an important point I'm trying to make. The John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act dealt with what jurisdictions, similar to this issue, dealt with what jurisdictions, what counties, Supreme Courts, could hear election law cases, correct?
Madam President, not exactly. This is what I was trying to clarify with Senator Lanza earlier. Only in the pre-clearance context.
Sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Back to the timeline, though. We did vote on the Voting Rights Act after the maps were thrown out.
Through you, Madam President, yes.
Okay, thank you. Madam President, the sponsor would continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Would you agree that it's either very coincidental or would it be suspicious to think that in 2022, in dealing with other election law cases and establishing 4 jurisdictions, blue jurisdiction county Supreme Courts, dealing with election law cases that was voted on, debated and voted on in this chamber after, in parallel and after the redistricting maps were thrown out, but it admitted, it failed to address the jurisdictions that we're talking about here today with the maps, that was legislation that was put in place to create a precedent so that these maps, that we could be talking about today's legislation, and you could point to that as we set precedent. Well, we set precedent, we could have done this then. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, through you, Madam President, I think I'm following, and I think what you're implying is that we passed the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act as a political scheme to set up precedent in response to what has happened, And while I appreciate this exchange, the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act was introduced in 2020, and we have been working on that bill for years. It just happened to pass after the maps were struck down.
Madam President, the sponsor continue to yield.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Thank you, Madam President, through you. So, but again, it was amended. It could have been amended again. It could have been amended to anticipate, we've got a map issue here. That's also election law stuff. Why don't we include it? And why weren't the maps included in the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act?
You, Madam President, just to clarify, you're asking why the John R. Lewis...
They're both. Why the two separate bills?
Because one was not dealing with maps at all, and this is dealing specifically with maps. The John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act vindicates a number of voting rights, not just in the redistricting context, although in some cases it might on the local level as it pertains to at-large districts versus not at-large districts. But that had nothing to do with statewide apportionment, and it was never, to be absolutely clear, my intent or any of my colleagues who voted to support that bill to support it for political reasons. This was to protect the voting rights of New Yorkers who had thus far had not had them properly protected, and in the absence of federal protection, in the absence of a stronger Section 5 in the Federal Voting Rights Act, we found it appropriate to come up with a New York version of that if you are familiar with voting rights acts, not just in this state, not just the federal one, but across the country, do not focus on maps or redistricting, whereas this is specifically addressing a constitutional right that a private citizen has and the legislature's right to prescribe regulations around how they vindicate that right.
Thank you, Madam President. Sponsor continue to yield, please.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes.
The sponsor yields.
Earlier today, in fact, the bill immediately before this two-bill supplemental calendar, part of the justification for throwing out the maps that were just provided in a 9-to-1 vote by the Independent Redistricting Commission was that there was concern about these maps and the people that drew and approved these maps not being familiar with the specific ins and outs, demographics, and of communities, and that they thought I'm paraphrasing another member, but that the Independent Redistricting Commission didn't factor in very local factors in the maps. In this bill, though, however, again, let's say that you've got somebody in the North Country that doesn't like the way that the North Country's divvied up. Senator Walshik and I split St. Lawrence County, and the independent master that drew the Senate line drew it right between the towns of Clifton and Fine. Anyone that lives within 50 miles of the towns of Clifton and Fine know that they're viewed as one community, Clifton and Fine. I mean, the buzz is that they should be one town. That was an anomaly that I wouldn't expect somebody from Pennsylvania to know. How are we getting better treatment? I mean, let's say that was an issue in St. Lawrence County, and somebody that lived in Clifton and Fine wanted to bring an action on these maps. And now instead of going to St. Lawrence County Supreme Court, that person's got to drive 4.5 hours, perhaps through the snow in the winter with an electric vehicle. Maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't, and to get to Albany. How is that any different than the justification in the previous bill about rejecting the maps?
Through you, Madam President, I'm not sure I'm following entirely on the connection to the previous bill, but I think on the substance of what you're communicating and whether or not a particular voter is going to have the chance to be vindicated in front of someone who, as my colleague referenced, knows them, knows the community. Imagine a scenario in which they did go to the St. Lawrence Supreme Court and then they appealed. Where would they have to go? They'd have to come to Albany. These are, as you know, and as all of us in this chamber know, these issues are almost certain to be appealed and will almost certainly end up in appellate court. So why not, on the first instance, allow for it to be in the appellate court, for them to develop that expertise, for everyone to be aware of that going into the litigation, such that if there are hardships with traveling, which I empathize with, or any other obstacles to them being able to get to the courthouse, that you can plan for that because you know where the suits will be brought.
Madam President, the sponsor yield for just a couple more questions.
Yes.
Okay, you know, I mean, certainly I can understand that one of my constituents is going to say, hey, I want to go into the court over which I have a vote of who sits in that Supreme Court, not somebody else's vote. Is it a coincidence? I think it's a coincidence, or I think it's interesting that a two-bill supplemental calendar today, that this and the maps are the two bills on the supplemental calendar. You know, obviously the other one was to reject a 9-to-1 set of maps. I mean, this seems like an example of anticipatory defensive legislation. Is it?
Madam President, this bill is an attempt to introduce predictability into the system, to have courts develop an expertise, and to allow for individuals to have their rights vindicated in a way that is similar to the New York Voting Rights Act and to the Federal Voting Rights Act.
Thank you, Madam President, on the bill. Thank you, Senator Myrie. Appreciate it. Look, we all know what happened 2 years ago. A judge in Steuben County threw out the maps. In his decision was so well written, allow me to be a little cynical about whether or not our judiciary has any political leanings, but a judge in Steuben County, not one of the 4 counties that would be afforded the ability to hear these kinds of cases in the future, wrote a decision that was so bulletproof that the Court of Appeals had to agree with him, that the appellate division had to agree with him first, and that the Court of Appeals, 7 justices, all appointed by Democratic governors, they couldn't throw it out. And so, number one, there's an example of not one of our experts in one of the, cosmopolitan jurisdictions was able to write a case that, the Court of Appeals couldn't overturn until some gymnastics a couple years later. This just, as a non-attorney, listening to this and watching this, this just smells to me that the majority is expecting a court challenge because it just threw out a 9-to-1 recommended map from an independent redistricting commission. Their work product largely mirrors what an outsider drew last year. You all appointed people to that. We appointed people to that. And it was 9-to-1. The Working Families Party and the Conservative Party and Democrat and Republican appointed members, 9 out of 10 of them agreed on that. And the majority didn't like it for whatever reason. That's your prerogative. I think I know the reasons, but I'll spare the chamber, talking too much politics. But so now we've picked 4 Democratic jurisdictions, dark, dark, dark blue. You're not going to get that Steuben independent, I'll look at this, write it. And again, was he political? I don't know. He had 7 Democratic judges, the majority of them, and the Court of Appeals agreed with him. This smells like venue shopping. We are going to preemptively decide who gets the first bite at the apple because, again, not an attorney, but everyone knows that first case, that first decision, that's the one that's really hard. You've got to have a reason to depart from that. And so, again, I firmly believe, like I did with what we did 2 years ago with the Voting Rights Act and selecting 4 venues then, that this is highly unconstitutional. I'll be voting in the negative.
Okay, thank you. Senator Tedesco on the bill.
On the bill, Madam President. We have a tremendous amount of discussion and debate on this floor, and rightfully so, because it concerns all of us, both affiliations, Democrat, Republican, as it relates to diversity and equity. And what we're doing today with this bill, and I presume it's going to pass, because nothing comes out to this floor that doesn't pass with the majority we have, supermajority, it strikes of hypocrisy to a great extent, not only for political affiliation, but geographic hypocrisy. Here we are, we talk about diversity and equity, but when it comes to disagreements, important disagreements on election law, fair elections, fair election districts. We don't want to have diversity or equity. We want to have 4 counties of the 62 who are controlled by Democratic judges, Democratic courts, Democratic judiciaries. And we want to forget about all the other affiliations in all the other counties. In that instance, we don't need diversity and we don't need equity, it seems here. And that kind of strikes me of hypocrisy. If you really want diversity and equity, you'd have it in every area, in every concern, and in every policy across the state, but not so much in this. It seems that a supermajority isn't good enough for you. You want to do the redistricting over again, the one that was entirely unconstitutional. And the sponsor says the purpose of this is to stop judge shopping for judges and judiciaries. This is the ultimate, if this bill passes, judiciary and judge in court shopping. This is one-stop shopping. You'll be all done for the rest of our lives. And so will the 19.5 people in New York State who want to support diversity and equity. Because there'll be no diversity and no equity as it relates to concerns about election law. You're going to 4 counties of one affiliation of the regions you pick of the state. You know, in a grocery store, they have packers. All the packers are going to be packing a bias in decisions on behalf of your side of the aisle. That's pretty clear. So when we scream out here, and we know how important it is, all that diversity, all that equity in a whole variety of different ways, not so much with something as important as giving the people of New York State, the 19.5 million people, fair elections, fair decisions about election law, and fair election districts. I mean, there's a variety of things you can do to win elections. To cheat with our judiciary is not one of the better things, I think. Doesn't do justice for you as public servants of the oath of office you took, of asking your constituents and telling them, we're not only elected officials, we're not only senators and assembly people, we're representatives. We heard what you said with that amendment. You want an outside bipartisan commission of 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans. It didn't work so well for you. So now you changed the courts. The commission came back bipartisan. 97% of the appointed individual who came and made the congressional districts last time came out of this commission, which your constituents voted for across the state, and mine did. So when you stand up and talk about diversity and equity, I think your constituents are watching you now and saying, not so much, because the hypocrisy is going to be seen after this bill passes and we all leave this Capitol tonight. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator.
President.
Are there any other senators wishing to be heard? He's going to explain as well. Seeing and hearing none, debate is closed. The Secretary will ring the bell. Read the last section.
Section 3, this action take effect immediately.
Call the roll.
Addabbo, Gianaris, Kruger, Ortsu, Cousins, White.
Senator Ryan to explain his vote.
Madam President, just a few quick points about Erie County. We've heard a lot about Erie County in this debate. I heard Erie County referred to as cosmopolitan. We think highly of ourselves in Erie County, but we do not self-describe as cosmopolitan. I've also heard Erie County referred to as a blue county. I wish it was a blue county. It is a purple county. We have Republican legislators, we have Democratic legislators, and we go back and forth between county executive, comptroller, sheriff, and DA, between Republicans and Democrats. So far from a blue county. But we should also note that Erie County sits in the 8th Judicial District, which comprises 8 counties the size of Rhode Island. So when people will see a judge in Erie County, you're seeing a judge who was elected by voters of 8 counties, and the judge could come from any of those 8 counties. Counties, I might mind you, are far less cosmopolitan than Erie County might be accused of being. And we should also note, in the 8th Judicial District, once again the size of Rhode Island, there's a commercial part, and if you have a commercial litigation in any of the areas the size of Rhode Island, you have to go to Erie County to have that case heard. So it's a quite common practice to have litigants from different areas of judicial districts have to go to one area to have a case heard. That's all I have, just a small clarification of the purple Erie County.
Senator Ryan to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Skoufis to explain his vote.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and I certainly rise in support of the bill, and I'll be voting for it. But I do want to respond to an identical argument we heard on a comparable bill last year, which is this hypothetical that, I think in this case, folks in Cortland County or Herkimer County will have to drive 150 miles. It abridges their constitutional rights, taking away the court of jurisdiction in their area. And again, if we're being honest here, we're being transparent, we all know in this chamber how these lawsuits work. And in the past 2 years, we've had 2 redistricting lawsuits. We've had one from the Democratic side. More recently, we've had the Harkin-Ryder lawsuit originally. And I assure you, Mr. Harkin-Ryder didn't open up the New York Post one morning, saw what was going on, and said, I need to file a lawsuit, and ran down the street to the nearest lawyer, and then ran down the street again to the nearest state Supreme Court to file that lawsuit. And similarly, Mr. Hoffman didn't open up the New York Times and do the same thing in Albany County. What happens is party officials, they reverse engineer these things, and they look for a plaintiff. I guarantee you, neither Mr. Harkin-Ryder nor Mr. Hoffman spent a single day in court, either filing the lawsuit or sitting through any of the hearings. And so this suggestion that we're abridging anyone's rights because they are not able to hop down the street and file a redistricting lawsuit in New York State if this bill becomes law is quite frankly laughable. I vote aye.
Senator Skoufis to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Rose to explain his vote.
Oh, thank you so much, Madam President. While I appreciate the lecture, equal justice means equal access to justice. And that's exactly what's being denied. Because when we're talking about somebody having to travel 4.5 hours to get to the same courthouse that someone lives 10 minutes away from, that is not equal access to justice. The reason why we have Supreme Courts in every county is so that people do not have to travel too far to get equal access to justice. And that's exactly what's being denied here. And the rationale that somehow we are trying to introduce predictability into the system is not a justification for denying equal access to justice. Who are we trying to seek predictability for? It's not for the public. It's for the politicians. And if you look at the venues that you've chosen, the predictability that you're looking for is predictability for the Democratic Party. So that you're sure when there's a case in one of your 4 pre-selected venues, you know the outcome. That's wrong. It's wrong and you know it. It's unconstitutional and you know it. So I proudly vote in the negative, Madam President, and I would urge my colleagues to do so.
Senator Rhodes to be recorded in the negative. Senator Bailey to explain his vote.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Senator Myrie, for introducing this bill and for your masterful debate on this process. When you practice in certain courts, there are certain parts that you go to. There is a medical malpractice part. We shouldn't eliminate that. There is a court of small claims for certain dollar amounts with under a certain amount. We should not eliminate that. Civil court has a certain dollar amount. We shouldn't eliminate that. There is a specialization in the areas of law that we need, that we require, that we have, and this is along those same lines. I see no concerns. I see no constitutional concerns. There is no deprivation of rights, moreover than saying, hey, I need every court should be the 51 Grand Concourse. No, we can go down the block to criminal court. We can't have every court in one court building, even within the same jurisdiction, within the same county. I think this provides an appropriate remedy to modernize what we are attempting to do in making things, quite frankly, as Senator Myrie put it in the debate, being more responsive and being more specialized in a very specialized area of law. We all know that if you have a will and trust that you need to do, you're not going to call 1-800, whatever it is, plaintiff attorney, right? You're going to go to a wills and trust attorney. We need to do the same thing, and I proudly vote aye on this, Madam President.
Senator Bailey to be recorded in the affirmative. Senator Steck to explain his vote.
Extremely briefly, I just want to apologize to my colleague for calling Erie County Cosmopolitan.
Thank you, Senator Steck. Senator Steck to be recorded in the negative. Announce the results.
In relation to calendar 465, those senators voted in the negative are Senators Ashby, Borrello, Gallivan, Griffo, Helming, Lanza, Martins, Matera, Murray, Oberacker, Ort, Rhodes, Rollison, Scarcella, Stanton, Steck, Tedisco, Weber, and Senator White. Ayes 39, nays 39-18. Pardon.
The bill is passed. Senator Gineris. That completes the reading of the controversial calendar.
Thank you, Madam President. Is there any further business at the desk?
There is no further business at the desk.
I want to remind the members of the majority conference to not drift too far away tonight in case we need you back. But with that, I move to adjourn until Tuesday, February 27th at 3 p.m.
On motion, the Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, February 23rd at 3 p.m. What else?